My name is Mike and I'm here to read a comic. And today's comic is For Lovers Only, issue number 87, dated November 1979. Again, like with all these comics from Charleston, kind of a product of its time. However, I did like the three stories. There was a lot of personal energy into it. We could see the cover is kind of like an art-centered one where we see an attractive couple they're about to embrace while they're in this art studio. Definitely the writer of that story had some issues, or the artist kind of wanted to work them out. Wasn't too bad though. The cover looks like it's from, oh no, it's written. I thought it was Capella. I love saying Capella. But no, I think it's another artist though. So anyway, I'm going to get into the story. And the first story is It's My Life. And kind of based on this story, I was wondering if Billy Joel actually kind of looked at this, because I kind of can see some of the elements in that song in this story.
I don't need you to worry for me, 'cause I'm all right.
So anyway, our two protagonists in this story, It's My Life, it's Penelope or Penny and Chuck. So anyway, we see Penelope here, pretty redhead, kind of has I guess a Dana Delaney look to her. She's 18, however, her parents are sort of treating her like she's property. So even though she's a grown adult, her parents are basically treating her like a 14-year-old. They're very upset about her staying out late. She wants to move into her own apartment, so she's living at home. She's offering to leave the nest, because apparently she does have a job that pays well enough that allows her to do that. This is 1976, and she as a legal adult is having trouble with her parents who won't allow her to do things. Her parents are very controlling of her. Like, for example, she does not. They do not like when anyone uses the name Penny. They insist that her name be pronounced Penelope. So you get an idea of how controlling they are. And the father's very angry. She feels that the other girls in the secretarial pool, who are legal adults and who are behaving like legal adults, are a bad influence on her daughter. Excuse me. So you get an idea of where this guy is coming from. So anyway, the two are fighting it out. She is dating someone, and this guy's name is Chuck. Kind of has a Tony Orlando feel to him.
I'm coming home, I've done my time.
He has the mustache and the hair and everything else. She is discussing the dust-up she had with her parents. Chuck is totally on board with her behaving like an adult. He's calling her Penny, but again, she's mentioning that her parents don't like anyone calling her that. So they're very controlling of her. Penny and Chuck are here embracing. These two are in love, Chuck's attitude is basically, listen, I hear you on your parents' hang up, but I'm not going to marry them. I'm going to marry you. So we should not let them interfere with any possible future happiness we have. However, Penny or Penelope, she's very devoted to her parents, so approval is important. So Chuck and Penelope, they go to the father. They say, listen, we want to get married because we're kind of like 18 and older. And the father says, no, you guys are too young for that. Chuck is not taking any of the father's crap. So, he's back talking the father. The father doesn't like it. The father, I guess, is very authoritarian, very into his structured social order, and what Chuck is saying is that we don't need your approval to get married. This is bothering Penny a little bit because she does want her parents' approval. So anyway, Chuck leaves, and Chuck is so angry that Penny has sided with her parents to such a degree that he doesn't want to see her anymore. Penny's upset about this. She yells that she loves you, she loves Chuck, and like that. But she's still standing next to Daddy here, and Daddy's very disapproving, calls Chuck a child, having a temper tantrum. Then Penelope, she has her little temper tantrum, and she runs upstairs saying, you're not treating me like an adult. And so the bad parents, they won this round. Penelope has to go forward because on one hand, she's bothered by the fact that Chuck says that he wants nothing to do with her now, but at the same time, she needs space away from her parents. So basically what she does, she gathers her money and some belongings, and she goes to the Greyhound, and she just puts some money on the table and says, I want to go as far as this will take me. It's not necessarily the best way to plan a getaway trip, but nevertheless, this is it. And she ends up in a place called Wellstown, and it's about 210 miles from home. That's really accurate there. And basically, she's staying at a hotel. She did find a job very quickly as a secretary, and her boss likes her, praising her work, and she's a go-getter at work. I guess she wants to put everything out of her mind, so she's focusing on her work. Anyway, Chuck was not really that serious about never wanting to see Penny again, because he goes to her home, visits the parents. Penny's not there. They don't know where she went. The parents are blaming Chuck for this. Chuck is arguing back with them, and here's some of the dialogue saying that, basically, I couldn't hold her against her will. No wonder she ran away. You were using her to make your own lives interesting and meaningful. And and basically saying that you two miserable cunts were making your daughter miserable so you could feel important. That's what basically Chuck said to him. They view Chuck as kind of like a low-class person. So again, class and status mean a whole lot to them. So they throw Chuck out. Basically, he's sort of like this kind of low-class ingrate. And then suddenly, a couple of days later, Chuck actually shows up in the Welltown office that Penelope is working in, and she's surprised. She doesn't understand how he had found her, but he's using that. Hey, baby, I would go to the ends of the earth for you. What happened is Chuck says, "Listen, let's get married right now. We'll get married right now, and let the pieces fall where they may, and we'll deal with it that way." So anyway, he walks out. Penelope's boss is very happy for Penelope because he overheard this. He's smiling approvingly as she left the job, because she did turn in a letter of resignation. So he's happy that someone that he liked is going to have some future happiness. He's not looking at it, I lost my most efficient employee. So anyway, the two decide to go back home and to confront Penelope's parents, because now those parents are his in-laws. So she calls, she kind of sets the parents up. She doesn't tell them everything, but she tells them enough that she's coming home. So they get back home, and basically the father hates Chuck, and he's still angry with Penelope not being at home. Chuck says, "Dude, too late for that. We're married." He's startled by this. The father is just at this point he's speechless. Penelope's explaining, "Listen, as a legal adult, I got married to the man I love at this moment." Jim is showing them the marriage certificate. And then there's a knock at the door. And it turns out to be Chuck's father. So Chuck must have called his dad to say, "Listen, we're going to be visiting my new in-laws, and if you want to meet us, you can, and meet them, come to this address." So anyway, Penelope opens the door for them. The father, Chuck's father, is a very gracious guy. He's very polite, very kind of easygoing, saying, "Listen, I only saw Penelope for a moment. She's effing hot, Dana Delaney hot, and I'm really liking this. So I really like her as a daughter-in-law. Chuck's a good guy. He would never marry, some woman who is a schifoso. So, I trust his judgment. These two are going to be happy." Then Chuck's father lets it out who he is. Turns out that he's the owner of this huge industrial empire. And it turns out that Chuck is in line to be the next chairman, once the dad decides to retire. And then suddenly the dollar signs are flashing in this guy's eyes, and also the mother-in-law, and suddenly they love him. And let's see, there's one thing I wanted to mention that happened previously, and I totally forgot. So anyway, after the cat's been let out of the bag, how Chuck found Penelope at Wellstone. Apparently he was going around to the various travel carriers, and the clerk had remembered her because of the unusual way that she bought her ticket. So that's how Chuck was able to go to Wellstone. Anyway, it turns out that the two parents are suddenly approving. They think Chuck's a great guy. They love the wealth that he's attached to. They're fine with their daughter just kind of being sold off. Oddly enough, the father drives the couple off. Penelope is waving to her dad, saying, "Goodbye, I'll see you later, and I love you both," even though she has no reason to feel this way. And that's it. And it's a good coupling. Yeah, it was a good coupling. The problem was with the in-laws, and both of them handled them pretty well. So this couple's going to make it. Okay, so the next story is Be Proud, My Love. And our two protagonists are Tia and Jim. This is kind of one of those stories. Small town girl is a hit in the big city, but she really longs for the small town. So we see Tia here. She's in New York. There's a huge party going on. We see a guy who looks like kind of Johnny Love there with the goatee. And we see Tia here drawn very beautifully, very glamorously. She's with her like football player type date. This guy is kind of giving off Tiff Tannenbaum energy. It turns out that he's basically an analog for Joe Namath. Joe Namath was still playing at this time, but he had seen better days. But nevertheless, this is sort of the thing where she is such a glamorous and desirable model that she basically grabbed one of the most eligible bachelors at the time in Joe Namath. Kind of even looks like a little like Joe. However, Tia decides that the glamorous life isn't for her.
She wants to lead a glamorous life. She don't need a
So she decides to go back to her small town. She also dresses down in terms of she sort of takes off the glamour makeup, and she's sort of back to being regular Tia. And regular Tia is kind of seen as this plain Jane figure. And she's even drawn a little bit that way. She sort of has those big glasses. There is some truth to that. I had a job in the fashion industry. When I was a teen, I was literally a gopher. And I would see a lot of models, and honestly, they weren't really all that attractive, many of them. I think the thing to be a model is you have to be photogenic. So, and I've seen people who aren't attractive in person, but they're very photogenic. Also, the thing with models is that they usually have these sharp features, and they will often, photograph very well. And that's sort of the thing they want. The problem with models is that they tend not to age well, because what happens is those sharp features that worked for them when they were younger works against them when they get older, because when women get older, the body fat in their face shrinks. And the thing is that when you have sharp features and you don't have really body fat to soften it, it kind of creates a hard look. So anyway, Tia, she's calling her parents saying that, New York, it worked well for a while, but I'm kind of like not feeling it right now. And she expects to be back home tomorrow. She's taking the bus. So anyway, Tia's at the bus station. She's dressed down. She's still a very attractive woman. But, she's noting that people are no longer staring at her. I guess because, again, she doesn't have that glamour puss look. She's looking at New York kind of longingly, like saying, hey, it was a nice visit, but I'm going home now. So anyway, Tia arrives in her rural hometown. She's greeted by two men. One of them is her father. The other turns out to be a guy named Jim. Jim works at the farm that Tia's father owns. And it turns out that Jim is actually a partner in the farm. So not only does Jim work a lot in the farm, he actually has an investment in it, sort of creating this nice little situation for Tia. Tia's home. She's getting to know Jim. And Jim's a really kind of a good-looking, cocky guy. Kind of has that Michael Landon look. When Michael Landon was, when he had first started on Little House on the Prairie. And the thing is, there's a little bit of tension. I think, I'm not quite sure. Oh, yeah. Basically, Tia's kind of concerned that because she's like kind of this plain Jane, that maybe a guy like Jim won't be interested in her. However, Jim is kind of interested in her. In fact, he even encourages Tia to gain a little weight.
I like a woman you can grab onto something.
So Tia's not taking this as kind of flattering, though. So I guess Jim kind of like, he wants a woman that he can grab a hold of. And Tia's kind of taking that, you want a fatty. But nevertheless, they agreed to go on a date. Again, they're having a lot of fun here. Tia's looking very nice here. And it turns out that as they're dancing, it kind of looks like a high school setup, really. Even though these are clearly like, mid-20s adults. They're two kind of these tough-looking guys, and they're kind of making snide remarks about Tia. And Jim overhears these snide remarks. He doesn't like it. He grabs the two of them and takes them outside. And then when we see Jim next, he has a black eye. Tia's noticing this. Jim is telling Tia, hey, as bad as I look, believe me, those other two guys who are insulting you, they look worse. So again, Jim is kind of like showing himself to be kind of a real dreamboat for Tia. Tia kisses Jim on his little boo-boo. Then we see Jim, he's with Tia and the parents, and he's telling them what those guys had said. They had called Tia skinny. and apparently this was this huge insult that Jim could not tolerate. So anyway, we see Jim and Tia. They're getting closer and closer, and again, they're kissing. They're both working the farm. Tia's wondering what Broadway Joe Namath would be thinking at this point. And I think Tia and Tia's mom are talking about it. Tia's mom is kind of bringing up the modeling life and whether she wants to go back to that. And Tia admits that she does think about it every so often. However, Tia's mom is saying, listen, if... actually, I called the guy Jim. His name is Mike. Oh, my God. I got his name mixed up the entire time. Okay, so then Jim Mike... Tia's mom is talking about him, saying, listen, he's a good guy, but he's not going to follow you back to New York if you decide to go back to modeling. So you kind of have to make a decision on whether you want to go back and grow your career, or do you want to grow whatever you have with Jim. And Tia's kind of confused about it. Tia's home, the father is kind of already treating Mike here as kind of a son. He's always treating him like a son-in-law. So he's acting as kind of a matchmaker with his daughter. So he's suggesting that Mike and Tia they go to a particular auction, maybe for some farm equipment. Tia is impressed with this because, honestly, she kind of thinks her dad is a cheapskate, and she's surprised that he would allow Mike this much authority to actually make a large purchase like this. But the father's explaining to Tia, listen, this guy really has a lot on the ball. He's educated and he's level-headed, and he's really just saying this guy has something going on. So anyway, the two actually are preparing to go to this auction. However, Mike is kind of spending some time alone with the horses. And Tia notices this, and she's confronting Mike. And the two are kind of letting their feelings, they're expressing their feelings. Mike wants Tia to stay at the farm and to consider being, hey, maybe you want to be my wife. Tia's not saying no. However, Tia wants to know how committed Mike is, because there are certain things that she's not going to do. So Mike is explaining, what's important to me and what's driving me. Again, these are the type of conversations that people who want to get married should have. So this is really good. Tia's still kind of playing that plain Jane look. I mean, she's clearly she's drawn very attractively, but nevertheless, she's saying, listen, there's a lot of girls in this small rural area who are a lot more attractive than me. Are you sure you don't want to marry one of them? Which is strange. I mean, to me, I would think a guy like Mike would probably look at the dating scene in a rural area and think, well, the odds may be good, but the goods are kind of odd. So I think Tia's kind of overestimating Mike's options, but nevertheless, the two come to an agreement. They kiss rather passionately. So then they make the agreement, that they're going to get married. So anyway, Tia's kind of talking to her mom, kind of explaining a little bit of the situation. One of the things that Tia won't do is she won't gain weight. She made that clear to Mike. Listen, it's healthier being thin. I'm not going to be your puffy cushion. So you're going to have to deal with me being a little thinner than you may like. However, one of the things that Tia wants to do, she wants to glam up again. She wants to be glammed up like she was in her modeling days. So she calls one of her friends who's a makeup artist. She kind of looks like a porcelain doll here, but nevertheless it's supposed to represent the fact that, Mike isn't marrying a plain Jane. He's marrying this incredibly beautiful woman, and yeah, the two look happy. So yeah, I'm gonna say that this couple is gonna make it. They're both intelligent. They both talk things out. So yeah, these two are gonna make it. Okay, before I get to the final story, I'm gonna talk about Buck's bag and some of the advice that he was asked. The first letter is from a girl. She has a girlfriend named Cindy, and Cindy has a boyfriend named John. And what's bothering her help here is that John is asking her out for dates while he's still dating Cindy. But she notes that Cindy actually knows about this, and she isn't angry about it. So John is asking, her if she wants to go on a date, and his girlfriend is fine with this, and this is Help's best friend, and I think Buck says go ahead and do it. It doesn't seem like they're exclusive, and you write that you guys are 13, so she's probably dating other people too, and as long as she's good with it, hey, go ahead. And that's his advice. The second letter is, it deals with a 12-year-old girl. She has a 12-year-old boyfriend, which is age appropriate. However, the 16-year-old sister, her 16-year-old sister seems to be kind of monopolizing their time. So, for example, the boyfriend would call, the older sister would pick up, and she would kind of talk to him for a while. So, in some ways, this kind of 16-year-old girl is kind of creeping on a 12-year-old boy. But the sister might not be looking at it that way. She just might like the guy as like a little brother, and she's just spending too much time, with him. Because the 12-year-old's like saying, hey, he's supposed to be spending time with me, not with my sister. Buck says that, that you may want to talk to your sister about this, explain the situation, that it's a little awkward if you're spending so much time talking to my boyfriend, who's 4 years younger than you, and who's not even a teen yet. And Buck says that if that doesn't help, just run to the phone faster. So, yeah, okay. And the last letter is from a 13-year-old girl who's bothered by the fact that she doesn't have a boyfriend. So, by the way, the last letter, the first letter I had mentioned about, the boyfriend dating two different girls. In my own class, I remember it was the 9th grade, there was one girl who was dating two guys in that class. And some days I would see her kissing one of the boys, and then, a day later I'd be seeing her kissing the other one, while they were all in the same class. And I don't remember any fights about that. So, yeah, I should have mentioned that sooner, but I just thought about it. Okay, so going back to this current letter, 13-year-old girl doesn't have a boyfriend, and she's bothered by this. Buck is saying this is not a big deal. You're only 13 years old. And there's a difference between, hey, being lonely and being alone. And, being alone is fine, as long as you don't feel lonely. And like I said, you'll get someone soon enough. You're only 13. So those are the letters that Buck got this month. Okay, before we go to the last story, there's a one-page story here called Cindy's First Date. Apparently, we have Cindy here, who they say is 16 and has never dated. I'm calling BS on both of them. Cindy is not 16 years old, and this Cindy has seen lots of action. She basically looks like Red Sonja here. So there's no way that that she was hard up for a date. Her date arrives. I guess they're going to the prom. He's a good-looking guy, and they're kind of talking about the prom. How he's taking her, and no, some of the guys are taking the other girls in a limousine, but he's not doing that because he thinks it's a waste of time. Cindy agrees with it. So they're really getting along. Kind of, Vinny here is kind of a cheapskate, and Penny's like, yeah, I agree with that cheapness. Then Cindy's kind of noticing how much better looking she is than the other girls. Okay. And that Vinny is a really nice guy and a really great date, and the two kiss. And not much of a story, however, the art is excellent here. It's beautifully drawn. The artist did actually leave their name, though I can't read it. Okay, so we're going to go into the last story. And the last story is The Art of Romance. Hopefully I'll get the names right. We do have Rob, we have Cindy, and we have Fred. So those are the three protagonists. And so it starts in high school. And we see Cindy here in an art class. This is kind of a professional art class. There was no high school that had art classes like this. We see they're painting from a live model, and this poor girl looks absolutely miserable, and she's in a bikini. She's screaming, "I'm being exploited." However, that story is not being examined. What's being examined is Cindy here is trying to paint her. Meanwhile, she notices one of the other students is spending more time looking at her rather than the actual model. So Cindy's a little bothered here. She kind of feels like maybe she's the one who's on display. And it kind of turns out that's the case. Because the class takes a break. So they take a break while, I guess, the model kind of just relaxes and decompresses. And one of the things they would encourage, this is why it's probably the artist's memories of art school, is the students to go around and to kind of look at the other students' work and critique it. Which is something you really shouldn't be doing in high school given how mean the kids are, but in a kind of like a college setting, it's probably fine. So anyway, it turns out that the guy, I believe his name is Jim. I hope I have his name right. He looks at Cindy's work, and he likes it. He says that it's a bit more cartoony. So you don't seem to be going for realism. You seem to be kind of going for this caricature look. Cindy is a big fan of cartooning. She says that she doesn't like to draw. Kind of like, live models, live action. She kind of likes the caricature part of art. I have to agree with her. However, Cindy wants to see what Jim has been doing, because Cindy notices that Jim didn't spend much time looking at her. However, it turns out that Jim was drawing a portrait of Cindy. So he was drawing Cindy as she was drawing the model. Cindy likes the drawing. She doesn't find it creepy or really weird. She does note that the teacher probably would not appreciate this. However, Cindy has a lot of confidence in Jim's ability, saying that, listen, I think you're going to be a famous artist someday, so this might be really valuable, and I may not want to have it because I don't feel like I deserved it. Jim is like, listen, you can have it. I'll make you a deal. If you agree to go to dinner with me, you can have that drawing. However, Cindy agrees with it. Kind of a good deal. She gets kind of a meal and a date out of it. Then it turns out that Jim has kind of had a hard life. he lives in kind of like a not so good neighborhood. Even Cindy remarks that this is a terrible neighborhood. Rob, God damn it, I can't get these names straight. This is Rob. I have no idea why I think I said Rob or Jim. I don't remember. The marijuana, okay. So anyway, so Rob takes Cindy home to see his apartment. His apartment's kind of crappy. He's a little ashamed. He's ashamed of it. I can definitely understand. When I was growing up, I grew up in kind of impoverished conditions, and I was really ashamed when people would come over to our apartment. And it turns out that Rob is doing some painting at home. It's very raw, very emotional artwork. Cindy notes this, and Cindy's kind of like, "Are you sure there's really a market for this?" And it's, no, actually, she does like the artwork, I should say, saying that maybe there's a market for this. It turns out that Rob's saying that I haven't had any success selling these paintings because the raw emotion and the raw energy that I put into these drawings and into these paintings, there really isn't a market for it. So while you appreciate it, the buyers out there aren't. Rob is explaining that he's feeling very deep. He has deep emotions for Cindy, kind of letting her know how he feels. And then what happens? Okay, I kind of figure out what happens. Okay, they continued to see each other through high school, but they weren't talking about marriage. And it turned out that after graduation from high school, Cindy gets a job as a secretary. And this is where he meets Fred, her boss. And it turns out that Fred really likes Cindy as both an employee and as a possible romantic partner. Yeah, he doesn't mention that part yet. He's just saying, listen, I've got a budget bump, and I can have my own secretary rather than simply picking one from the secretarial pool. So, listen, I want you to be my personal secretary. You'll have a bump up in salary. Also, where I go, you go. So if I go to the top, you're coming with me. And that's the deal that he's offering Cindy. And it turns out that Fred wants to take Cindy to lunch. So he can discuss the new job duties for her. However, it turns out that she already scheduled a lunch with Rob. So there's a conflict there because she's saying, listen, I can't have lunch with you because I promised my boyfriend. But Fred is insisting that Cindy break off her date with her boyfriend, saying, listen, this is business. This is a job opportunity for you. It's really in your best interest to sort of just cancel this date and just go to lunch with me. So she decides to cancel the date with Rob. So she's going out with the boss here, and it's noted by one of the other secretaries that this guy Fred, the boss, is one of the really desirable individuals in terms of like hooking up with, because he's the most eligible bachelor in the entire company in terms of looks, in terms of age, in terms of like his mobility to move up. So some of the secretaries there are a little jealous of Cindy. Then we see Cindy and Fred. They're at lunch. He's discussing business, but what happens is Rob bursts into the restroom and the restaurant, and he breaks up the coupling. He says that he went to the office after. What had happened was Cindy had left a message with the landlord, because remember, this is 1976, and people really did not have like answering machines, which is like the earliest of kind of the phone technologies. So she had left the message with the landlord, but the landlord didn't get the message to Rob. So Rob was waiting at that restaurant for Cindy. Cindy never showed up. Rob went to her office to find out where she might be. Someone snitched her out, told her that she's at this restaurant with Fred. So Rob kind of has some bad ideas here, and now the three of them are kind of working things out. I don't think Rob likes this new boss. He wants Cindy to leave the job, saying, hey, I want you to, be with me. Rob is accusing Cindy of kind of cheating on her. He's being kind of sarcastic. Fred doesn't like this. He doesn't like the tone that he's taking with Cindy, even if he's just the boss and Rob is the boyfriend. Rob's kind of a quitter. He kind of leaves. He says, hey, I guess you want to be with him now. Cindy's very upset about this. The boss there is kind of like, yeah, I'm glad he's gone. And he basically tells Cindy that, saying, listen, you don't deserve a guy like him. You deserve a guy like me. So they're at a place called the Purple Corner. This is where all this drama is coming out. So anyway, he goes back to telling her how great the offer is and how she should take the job. Meanwhile, he's saying, hey, by the way, let's go on a date and let's go to Hawaii, because one of my options is to become the director of the Hawaii division of the company, which means I'll be living in Hawaii. You might like it, so let's fly out there and see how we do. So anyway, Cindy is with Fred. It's still kind of a worker relationship, though it's clearly becoming something more here. Fred is really taken by Cindy, and he's really giving her the hard sell in terms of being here with me will make you a lot happier than saying being with that other jerk. Cindy's kind of torn by this because she still has a torch for Rob. And she also notes that Rob could never take her on this type of vacation. So she's kind of putting money into the equation at this point. So anyway, they get to Hawaii. She's having the time of her life. And the two are kind of getting closer and closer. And it seems like Fred here kind of wants to take the relationship further than just simply being, employee-employer. But at the same time, Fred's actually kind of a decent guy. So when they come back, he invites Cindy to an art exhibit. And Cindy's kind of interested in art, and she's still thinking about Rob, agrees to go. And it turns out that Cindy recognizes the paintings at the exhibit, and they're Rob's paintings. But there's also something else with the paintings. There's also other paintings that he had done after Cindy had left that were not as raw, were not as quote, angry, and much more kind of much more scenic and relaxed. And it turned out that that Rob, after Cindy had left him, he had a lot to think about. He kind of like those inner demons that were bothering Rob kind of disappeared, or he became comfortable with them, he accepted them, and he changed as a person. So his art style reflected the change that he was going through personally. So the three of them are here in the gallery, and basically what happened was Fred took Cindy to this gallery to see whether she really wanted him or whether she wanted Rob. And Cindy was thinking about this, and she realizes that there are aspects to being with Fred that she'll never have with Jim. For example, Fred is obviously going to be a very wealthy person. He's kind of going to be working in paradise. And she's like, you know what? I would have safety and security, and I would like Fred a lot, but I wouldn't have passionate love for him. And she decided to go with passionate love. And that was how she felt with Rob. So then she chooses Rob. And that's the story. I think this couple's going to make it. Cindy was given an opportunity to pick, what was in her heart. Ken was a decent guy. He kind of said, listen, I need to know how you really feel. And Cindy went with the guy that she was attracted to. The guy that she was attracted to also changed. He changed who he was. So he had some personal growth too. So yeah, this couple's gonna make it. Fred just needs a new secretary. So he'll just pick the hottest chick he sees in the secretary pool. And yeah, that's it. And that is my walkthrough of For Lovers Only, issue number 87. And I hope to have more reviews up soon. Bye.